So Illinois has a lot of different watersheds associated with it. So if we look at this map right here, this is a map of the state of Illinois, and these are all of our major watersheds. And you can see that they cover the entire state. And again, with inside of a watershed, we can have smaller watersheds. So we can have with inside of our community smaller ones, but these are the major ones where most of our water comes from. So if we zoom in a little bit here, we can see them all kind of rendering. And I did put a link of this on Blackboard. So we can go over here and we can look at, let's see here, if I move over, we can see some of the watersheds here, especially in DeKalb County. So we have the Fox watershed, so that deals with the Fox River that flows through, McHenry and, Aurora and everything. So all of the water that lands in this area here will flow towards the Fox River. We are rightfully into the Kishwaukee watershed, so any water that flows inside of here. And you can see here's DeKalb. It goes just south of the city, and then it flows north. We flow into the Kishwaukee River, flows north up to the Kishwaukee River, and then that watershed here all discharges up north by Cherry Valley, up by the Kishwaukee River, where it flows into the Rock River up by Rockford. And then we have like the Rock watershed. So this is the Rock, the Rock River that runs through Rockford, that flows into here. Some of these areas down in here flow north into this, and so it all discharges at this point. And so we can see that we have lots of different watersheds. So here's the Des Plaines. We can move over even further and go into Chicago. This pink area right here is where this watershed, this is the Lake Michigan watershed, so any water that lands in here goes into the Great Lakes. And this is part of the issue is right here, and then this water right here, this is the Cook Aquifer, or Cook watershed. Anything that lands in here discharges at the Chicago River. But if you notice, like this Des Plaines one, it discharges this way. The Kankakee discharges this way. So only with inside of this boundary area along in here does the water actually reach the Lake Michigan. And this is really important point, because if and I'll show it next, is if you get where you're getting your drinking water from, if you're not in the watershed, not in this area here, your water that's landing in here is not feeding into the Great Lakes. You're feeding into the Mississippi River. And so if you're pulling water out of the Great Lakes and then bringing it over, you're changing where that water is coming from, and you're changing watershed boundaries and budgets. We're going to talk about a lot more about the state of Illinois and some of the issues, but this is one of the big things, is that if you're not inside of this area, your water is not going into the Great Lakes, and we're depleting that water. So this is just showing you the whole state. Then I also have this one, which I thought was kind of interesting, and I'll post this one. This is the water distribution use in the state of Illinois. So if we focus in a little bit over here, we can see that most of the percentage of municipalities use groundwater. So everywhere you see this little orangish color across here, those are municipalities that are using groundwater. Now the gray parts of the state are where it's just all homes, individuals. They're not municipalities. So municipality is where you actually have like a large number of homes. You have cities. If you live inside of a very rural area where you're the only home, you're not going to be part of a municipality. You're just pumping your own water. But you can see across the state how much of the state is using groundwater. Lake Michigan is this darker blue color. Inland surface is right here, and then mixed watersheds, so they're mixing up what they're getting. So somewhere down in here, they're using mixed. So they're probably using a little bit of groundwater and a little bit of surface water in that area. So let's focus up on this area up north where we are and kind of look at what's going on here. Now, for the city of DeKalb, as I said, all people in the city, in the whole county of DeKalb, all use groundwater. So if you're in the rural areas or you're in the municipalities, down like here down in Sandwich, you're over here in DeKalb, Sycamore area, you're using the groundwater. And so this little arrow here is showing you that we're pulling water. This is where the well is. So if I focus in a little bit more, this is where our main, let's see, go down, right here. This is our main well, which is over out towards Malta. So if you're out in that area, that's our main groundwater pool is over in here. Now what's going on with Chicagoland area? Now I just showed you where the watershed is. Does this map, so everywhere that's getting this blue color in here is all getting Lake Michigan water. Now compare this map to the last map I just showed you for the watershed. This is where all of these areas in this darker kind of tealish blue are all getting their water from the Great Lakes, but they're not part of the Great Lakes watershed. And so there had to be agreements with international agreements between us and Canada and all of the other Great Lakes states in order to be able to pull more water than we're actually putting back into the Great Lakes. And so this is an issue. And so what we do is we pull that water out, and then it gets distributed out to all these distribution centers out, and then these points right here distribute the water out to other areas. So we pull the water in, and then we distribute it back out. And so you can see who is using Lake Michigan water. And then you get into here, this area right here up in Kane County, they're using the Fox River. Here they're using groundwater. Here they're using mixed. They're using some of the water from the Fox River and some groundwater. So these areas are mixed use. These are areas of groundwater use. So you can see groundwater is still a major part of the area. But this is all surface water, and this is all Great Lakes. So we have a disconnect between the two. I will show groundwater issues again with the state of Illinois coming up. There's a big issue with this Joliet area and drawing down way too much groundwater, and we'll talk about some of the changes that have occurred when it comes to that. But you can see throughout the state all the different municipalities and everything. And then if we go over to here, we can look at what's going on in Chicagoland area. And so if you ever go out to like right here, this is that crib, these are the cribs that are out in the Great Lakes. So you can see that there's Dune one, there's this one, there's this one, there's this one, are where the intakes are coming in. So all these little reds are the intakes. So you can see there's a whole bunch of intakes right along the edge of there. So and if we look at the watershed map again, any water that lands along those pink lines, let me see if I can change it over. Change over to this pink. Wherever this pink line is that water is actually getting into the Great Lakes. So if you noticed all of those cribs that are right along the edge here, so whatever you do at this edge feeds right into the Great Lakes. So you got to be careful for pollution issues. Let me go back to this map here we were looking at. So this is all of the cribs that are all bringing the water inlet into there. It's bringing it in here. That pipe comes in here and then distributes it out to all of these areas, these different municipalities, these different communities in here. And so we have these pipes. So there's one pipe that comes down into Indiana that then feeds these southern parts and stuff like that down in here. And so these are the different distributors of the water. So these different colors in here aren't related to where they're getting their water now. Now this is who is doing the distribution. So this color here is City of Chicago. This is City of Chicago water. There's a pipeline that goes right out to this one right here. That's the Northwest Water Commission. Again, they're getting their water from here, and there's a giant pipe that brings the water, and then it distributes the water out to all these communities out into here. And then this area here, these yellow ones, are what are called unused allocations. That means they have been allocated a certain percentage of water from the Great Lakes, but they're not using it yet. They have chosen to stick with groundwater or with other resources, but they do actually have an allocation that they can still do. Now they can sell their allocations, they can do other things, but right now these areas right here are not using what has been allocated to them from the Great Lakes. And so you can see that water and watersheds are really important when we're going to be talking about where your water comes from, pollution, how it gets into it, and where all the different parts of it are. So with that, that was just a couple explanations. Both these maps are online for you to peruse, and I'll also put a link onto the the Illinois State Water Survey website where I got these maps, so that if you want to peruse anything else about watersheds.